Installing 4 by 4 ceramic tiles across a 10 by 12 kitchen was no small feat. Ethan Carter diligently spread adhesive on each tile before carefully placing it next to the previous one, ensuring every piece was perfectly aligned. He smiled to himself, aware that even the slightest misalignment could compromise the entire project. Working under Grant Nichols Renovation and Remodeling, known for its uncompromising commitment to client satisfaction, Ethan meticulously checked each tile before moving on. As he neared the completion of a row, his wife, Emily, took it upon herself to call Grant on Ethan's behalf. While she chatted on the phone, Ethan readied himself to start the next row, grabbing another box of tiles. The days when Emily's calls carried warmth and encouragement were long gone. Her questions had grown terse and impatient. "When will you be done?" she demanded. Ethan took stock of his progress and estimated it would take him another 3 hours to finish Harrison's kitchen. Unimpressed with his answer, Emily ended the call abruptly, leaving him feeling pressured to rush. Still, Ethan forced himself to stay focused, knowing that haste could lead to mistakes. As he worked, his thoughts drifted back to Emily. They had shared over 2 decades together, yet the woman he once fell for seemed like a distant memory. Ethan first met her during his early days working for Grant Nichols. She had walked into Grant's office, apologizing for her lackluster academic record at Fairway High School. Ethan noticed her stout frame and long, wavy hair, but he quickly turned his attention back to the tools in the shed, until Grant sharply reminded him that Emily was his daughter. "Yes, sir," Ethan had replied, resisting the urge to roll his eyes. Despite her father's warning not to pursue her, Emily seemed determined to catch Ethan's attention. She often smiled flirtatiously whenever their paths crossed. While Ethan remained polite, he didn't encourage her advances. "You understand, right?" Grant had warned him one afternoon. "I don't want you chasing after my daughter." "I'm not chasing anyone," Ethan replied truthfully. At 21, he found 17-year-old Emily annoying. She was immature, carried extra weight, and struggled with severe acne, traits that Ethan found particularly unappealing. But Emily was persistent. One evening, as Ethan unloaded equipment with another coworker after a long day, she approached him. "Hey, Ethan," she said coyly. "Ah," Ethan replied, struggling to open a bag of cement. "I turn 18 on Saturday," Emily declared, leaning closer. Ethan glanced briefly at her blouse before giving her a neutral response. "Happy birthday," he said flatly. Later, Emily's mother, Margaret Nichols, insisted that Ethan attend Emily's birthday party. Wanting to stay in good standing with his employer, Ethan purchased a birthday card and a silver bracelet from a pawn shop. During the celebration, he even agreed to accompany Emily to the prom, posing for photos and dancing with her despite her ill-fitting dress. By the end of the evening, Ethan gave her a polite kiss on the cheek and left. Days later, Grant scolded Ethan for breaking Emily's heart by failing to call her. Reluctantly, Ethan asked her out, leading to a series of dates. On the 5th outing, Emily surrendered her innocence to him. 5 months after their wedding, Sophia Carter was born. For the next decade, Ethan endured the least desirable assignments at Grant Nichols Renovation and Remodeling. He often suspected that Grant deliberately assigned him grueling tasks to punish him for marrying Emily. Initially, Emily proved to be a loyal wife, trying to understand Ethan's likes and dislikes. She learned to cook his favorite meals and remained silent during Denver Broncos games. She even made efforts to lose weight, though her success was sporadic. Despite some improvement, her skin bore visible acne scars. As Sophia entered school, Emily took a job at the Garland County Public Library. The modest pay was balanced by excellent health and dental benefits. However, everything changed after their 16th anniversary, when Emily's cousin Karen moved to town with her 4th husband, Liam. Karen's brash demeanor and negative influence began to rub off on Emily, who grew loud and neglectful of her household duties. Ethan didn't mind picking up the slack, using his skills in cooking and cleaning to keep the household running. However, Emily's neglect became habitual. Nights out with Karen and Liam grew frequent, leaving Sophia to learn household chores and sewing buttons on her school uniform. Instead of blaming her mother, Sophia directed her frustration toward Ethan. 3 hours after Emily's abrupt call, Ethan finished the job at Harrison's house. As he gathered his tools, his aching back reminded him of his age. At 43, the physical toll of the work was much harder than when he was 21. Returning home, Ethan was greeted by the aroma of pork chops, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Emily's recent health-conscious cooking had led him to accuse Sophia of attending BYU to escape her mother's bland meals. She never denied it. When Ethan leaned in to kiss Emily at the stove, she waved him away, wrinkling her nose. Resigned, Ethan tossed his clothes into the hamper and headed to the shower, washing away the day's sweat. Drying himself off, he avoided looking in the foggy mirror, knowing the reflection would show a man worn down by decades of struggle. Ethan Carter descended the stairs just as Emily was setting out his dessert. "We've got hot apple pie," she announced cheerfully, placing a frosted mug of beer in front of him. Ethan froze, his stomach twisting as unwelcome memories resurfaced. The last time Emily had served him beer in a frosted mug was on her 35th birthday, just months before their 17th anniversary. Sophia had been out with friends that evening, leaving Ethan and Emily alone. Emily had poured him a beer and then launched into a rambling conversation about nothing in particular. Ethan had nodded along, savoring the cold drink, until she finally came to the point. "Darling, there's something I want to talk to you about," she had said, her voice taking on a peculiar tone. Ethan had urged her to get to the point, as his beer was nearly gone. That's when Emily dropped the bombshell. "Darlene and Liam aren't exclusive," she'd said casually. "They have an open marriage. Have you ever thought about being unfaithful?" Ethan had been floored by the question. He took a moment to gather himself before answering. "Of course I've thought about it," he admitted. "I'm human. I'd be lying if I said I never looked at another woman." Emily smirked, raising an eyebrow. "Like who?" "That girl at the gas station, Shelley," Ethan confessed. Emily snorted derisively. "Shelley? As if you'd ever stand a chance with her." Ethan ignored the jab and added firmly, "But I'm married. Sure, I think about it, but that's where it stops. We made vows, Emily, before our family and friends. I'm not breaking those for anyone, including Shelley from the gas station." Emily wasn't convinced. "What if renewing our vows could show how much we trust each other?" she suggested, her tone deceptively sweet. "No," Ethan had replied, his voice resolute. "Our original vows were clear, and I stand by them. While Darlene and Liam might have their open marriage, we don't, and we never will." Emily had tried to argue, but Ethan cut her off. "No, but punto." End of discussion. He walked out of the kitchen, hoping that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. Emily brought up the idea twice more in the following weeks, framing it as a testament to their love. Each time, Ethan dismissed it. On her fourth attempt, his patience finally snapped. He picked up the phone and called her father, Grant Nichols. "What are you doing?" Emily had asked, her face pale with realization. "Hello, Grant," Ethan greeted warmly. "Can I speak to Margaret?" Turning to Emily, he added, "Tell your mother about Darlene's idea and your thoughts on it." Panicked, Emily took the phone but rambled incoherently before abruptly ending the call. She glared at Ethan. "You're despicable." Ethan's face darkened. "Listen carefully, Emily. If you ever bring up this nonsense about an open marriage again, we're done. Do you understand? This marriage will end." Emily had never broached the topic again, and, to Ethan's relief, Darlene and Liam's visits dwindled after that incident. He privately referred to them as the toxic twins, and their absence brought some peace to his home. Fast forward 5 years. Ethan watched Emily pour his beer, struggling to keep the foam from spilling over. She wasn't great at it. "I'll be 40 next Tuesday," she said as Ethan cut into his pork chop. "Yeah," he replied, swallowing a bite. "I was a Vestal when we met, you know," she continued, her tone loaded with meaning. "Turning 40 and being a Vestal," Ethan remarked dryly. "Quite the milestone. All this time, I've only been with one man," she added, her voice carrying a hint of accusation. "Lucky for you," Ethan quipped. "You've had at least one good man. Can't say the same for some." Emily leaned forward. "And how many women have you been with? 10? 15? More?" Ethan took a long sip of his beer. "Life isn't always fair, Emily." She smiled tightly. "Considering my birthday is coming up and everything I've done for you, Sophia, and my parents, I think I deserve a little freedom. Ethan raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Darlene and I found a great deal on a casino in Las Vegas, Emily continued. We're going next week. Who knows? Maybe we'll meet some guys. Not for anything serious, just a date. It might help me appreciate what I already have. Ethan set his fork down, staring at her for a long moment. Do whatever you think will help, Emily, he said finally, his tone unreadable. He picked up his plate and walked to the sink, leaving her words hanging in the air. The sauce is almost perfect, Ethan Carter commented, looking at his plate. What's your take? Emily pressed, her tone slightly sharp. I've already told you, it's nearly spot on, Ethan replied, his voice calm but firm. This isn't just about the sauce, Ethan, Emily shot back. This is about me branching out, gaining some new experiences. So, you're saying I'm overreacting? Ethan asked, narrowing his eyes. Or are you implying something else entirely? I've made up my mind, Emily declared, crossing her arms. You can either support me or choose divorce. It's your call. I'll take divorce, Ethan said flatly. By the way, do we have any ice cream for this pie? Emily's expression faltered. Hold on a second, Ethan. Divorces aren't cheap. We can't just throw that around like it's nothing. What's there to discuss? Ethan replied, his voice rising slightly. You've clearly made up your mind. You and your ever-reliable cousin Karen are heading to Vegas. Forget about our mountain of bills. You're off for your grand 40th birthday celebration, complete with potential dates while you're still married. And you think I'm supposed to just support this? Sure, Emily. That makes sense. It's just for 1 week, Emily argued. A week, a day, a single second, it doesn't make a difference. Cheating is cheating, Emily. Ethan responded firmly, cutting into his pie. And I won't stay married to someone who's unfaithful. By the way, no ice cream? Figures. You could take Karen with you, Emily suggested, attempting to deflect. Absolutely not, Ethan said, laughing bitterly. I wouldn't go near Karen if she were the last person on earth. Ethan tasted the pie and immediately frowned. Let me guess, aspartame? Fantastic. Just ruins the whole thing. He pushed the plate aside, stood up, and wiped his mouth. I'm calling a lawyer first thing tomorrow to start the divorce process, he said, leaving the kitchen. The next morning, Ethan woke up at his usual time, 5:30 a.m. Despite having no work that day, he couldn't shake the routine. Quietly leaving the bedroom, he made his way to the kitchen, brewed himself a cup of coffee, and checked his emails. One from Penny Barnes's office caught his eye, confirming his appointment for 10 a.m. and detailing what documents he needed to bring. Hearing Emily stirring upstairs, Ethan debated making her coffee, but ultimately decided against it. If she wants some, she can make it herself, he thought. No, I told him. Just give it to me. Emily's voice drifted downstairs as she spoke on her phone. When she spotted Ethan calmly reading the news on his phone, she let out a sharp shriek and ended the call. What are you doing here? Emily demanded. Dennis hasn't gotten the green light for the federal savings and loan rebuild, so I'm free today, Ethan replied without looking up. The grass is too damp to mow, so I'm catching up on the news. Did you hear Burns & Burns is opening a second location? You could have at least saved me some coffee, Emily snapped. You could ask Karen to make you some, Ethan shot back, placing his mug in the sink. Later that morning, Ethan arrived at Penny Barnes's office. Penny, a sharp brunette wearing glasses that seemed more for effect than necessity, greeted him with a professional smile. So, you recently refinanced at 3.9%, Penny noted, flipping through the documents Ethan had brought. Yes, Ethan explained, sighing. My daughter is in her final year of college, and my in-laws had massive medical bills. Deductibles were sky high. Then there were the funeral costs, plus Grant Nichols' renovations nearly went under. A few projects went over budget because Ryan didn't time the orders properly. Penny nodded sympathetically, jotting down notes. Sounds like you've been through a lot. Ethan leaned back in his chair, letting out a breath. More than you know. Penny Barnes scanned the paperwork before glancing at Ethan Carter. So, Mr. Carter, how do you think divorcing your employer's daughter will affect your job? I plan to sever ties with the company, Ethan replied with a faint smirk. But Emily's position at the Garland County Public Library shouldn't be impacted, should it? Penny nodded thoughtfully and continued reviewing the documents. By Friday, Kevin still hadn't received the green light for the federal savings and loan renovations. Ethan stayed home, finishing up some smaller projects, when his phone buzzed with a call from Emily. "What is this? Some kind of scam?" Emily shouted as Ethan picked up. "Oh, you've seen the documents," Ethan remarked evenly. "What's the issue now?" "Something about the first-floor bathroom needing a fix." "The lock's sticking," Emily replied tersely. "We'll talk about it when I get home." "No, Emily," Ethan said firmly. "We've already had this conversation, and talking hasn't solved anything. Especially not when you seem more interested in listening to Karen's advice than your own husband's." "I'm done talking." There was a pause on the line. "I see what's happening," Emily said softly. "But I don't want a divorce. And I don't want to be married to someone unfaithful." Ethan shot back. "Anything else?" "No, Emily replied quietly. "Goodbye then." Ethan hung up, ignoring her subsequent calls. Later, when Grant Nichols's number flashed on his phone, Ethan set down his screwdriver and answered. "Hello," he greeted. Grant erupted with a flurry of angry words, blending curses with demands for details about what was going on between Ethan and Emily. "It's pretty simple, sir," Ethan began. "Karen and Liam have their open marriage, and it's rubbed off on Emily. She started thinking it might work for us too. I made it very clear I wasn't interested." Grant's sputtering intensified. "Last night, Emily gave me an ultimatum. Accept her new terms or face divorce," Ethan continued. "So, I chose divorce." Grant tried to argue, his tone shifting toward emotional manipulation. "Sir, I appreciate your concern," Ethan said with forced politeness. "But with 3 sons and a daughter, maybe you should focus on their issues, not mine. Besides," Ethan muttered under his breath, "why would I want to stick around a failing business that hasn't turned a profit in years?" When Emily returned home that evening, she wasn't alone. Karen and Liam followed her, clearly prepared to state their case. Ethan expected as much and stayed seated on the couch as they began. "You see, Ethan," Liam started smugly, "our open arrangement works because we're secure in our marriage. And it lets me maintain meaningful friendships outside of it," Karen added, smiling sweetly. "There are no secrets between us, and it's brought us closer." "Well, that certainly clears things up," Ethan remarked dryly. Emily, Karen, and Liam beamed, mistaking his sarcasm for agreement. "Actually," Ethan said, standing up, "once the divorce is finalized, Emily, you're free to share your life, and whatever else, with anyone you choose." Liam smirked. "So, just because you feel inadequate, Emily has to suppress her talents and desires?" Ethan flashed a wide grin. "If thinking that makes you feel better, Liam, be my guest." He strolled out of the room, heading for the stairs. That night, Emily attempted to rekindle closeness. Ethan sidestepped her advance, chuckling. "Get some rest, Emily. You've got a busy day tomorrow, don't you?" The next morning, as per his routine, Ethan woke at 5:30. He left the bed without bothering to shut the door, indifferent to whether his movements disturbed Emily. Downstairs, he brewed coffee, sipped it slowly, and scrolled through the latest news headlines. He snorted at a piece on political reforms. "These politicians should live by their own rules," he muttered. "Try Social Security instead of lifetime perks. Private health care? No, here's the insurance the rest of us get." At 11, a knock sounded at the door. Ethan opened it to find Liam standing on the porch. "I'm here to pick up Emily for the airport," Liam said, attempting to step inside. Ethan's firm hand on the door frame stopped him. "I'll let her know you're here," he said, nudging Liam back and shutting the door. Ethan returned to the couch, unbothered, and resumed watching his recorded sitcom. When Emily came downstairs with her suitcase, she immediately confronted Ethan. "Why didn't you tell me Karen and Liam were waiting outside?" "All right. Karen and Liam are here," Ethan replied without looking up, his focus still on his sitcom. "Seriously? Must you act so immaturely?" Emily huffed, leaning toward him as though expecting some reaction. Ethan casually leaned back, leaving her kiss to land in empty air. "We'll discuss this when I get back," Emily said curtly. "No, we won't," Ethan responded flatly, his eyes never leaving the screen. After finishing his show and enjoying a quiet, satisfying meal, Ethan tackled his to-do list. He repainted the front door a soft yellow, which beautifully complemented the house's red brick exterior. He chuckled to himself when Samson, their tabby cat, meowed impatiently from the garage. "Don't worry, buddy," Ethan called out to the cat. "I'll let you out once the paint's dry." Heading upstairs, Ethan began addressing more pressing matters. He canceled their shared credit cards, recalling no separate cards Emily might have, but unwilling to support her indiscretions or Karen's extravagant schemes. Logging into Emily's personal bank account, he withdrew half the balance, reasoning it was only fair. He repeated the process with their joint account, one he had solely funded, and transferred the money into a new account in his name. Using online services, Ethan removed his name from utilities and cable subscriptions. An email from Garland County Power and Light confirmed the cancellation would take effect at the end of the billing cycle. "Doesn't matter," Ethan muttered to himself, closing the tab. Feeling the pangs of hunger again, Ethan decided it was time for a treat. Sloan's Pizza, he thought, a grin forming. Emily had always forbidden it, calling it a heart attack on a plate. "Maybe I'll drop dead," he joked to himself, ordering a large pizza and a draft beer at the restaurant. The waitress, a cheerful woman with a warm smile, tapped his wedding ring with a long, manicured nail. Her gesture soured Ethan's mood as he glanced down at the band. Thanking her politely, he left a tip, returned to his truck, and finally slid the ring off. Placing it in the console cup holder, he muttered, "Forever, love?" "Huh, Emily?" "Guess that ended today." On his way home, Ethan stopped for gas. Initially planning to buy only $10 worth, he decided to fill the tank completely. 22 gallons sure takes time, he mused, watching the pump gurgle. Inside the convenience store, he grabbed a six-pack of Budweiser and a pint of strawberry ice cream. Shelley, the former cashier who had attracted many local men, including himself, was no longer there. She'd gotten married, much to Ethan's disappointment. Instead, Shannon Carlisle, a petite brunette, manned the register. Ethan grinned as Shannon stepped onto a milk crate to scan his items. He remembered a previous exchange when he had asked her height. Her sharp response, "I'm 4 feet 8 inches tall." "How short are you?" had been met with his playful quip. Her hearty laugh had brightened her already striking features, and since then, she affectionately called him Shorty. "Your wife out of town, Shorty?" Shannon teased, noting his purchases. "My wife's gone for good," Ethan replied simply. Shannon glanced at his left hand, now bare, and then met his eyes. After a brief pause, she asked with a teasing smile, "So, where are you taking me on our first date?" Ethan chuckled. "Shannon, as lovely as you are, why would you want to date an old guy like me?" "That's about 7 items," she replied with a wink, bagging his things. The following Wednesday, Ethan received a call from his daughter, Sophia. "Eckley's Renovation and Remodeling." "Ethan speaking," he answered. "Dad, yesterday was Mom's birthday," Sophia said pointedly. "Yes, so?" Ethan replied, scratching his stubbled face. "Why didn't you call her?" Sophia pressed. Ethan sighed deeply. "I just didn't, kiddo." "Why not?" Sophia persisted. "You'll understand soon enough," Ethan said quietly. "Your mother thinks that now that she's 40, she should start dating other men," Ethan said flatly. "What?" Sophia exclaimed, stunned. "What are they teaching you in school these days?" Ethan retorted. "Married women don't date other men." "That's old-fashioned," Sophia said, laughing nervously. "Goodbye, Sophia," Ethan said curtly, ending the call. 10 minutes later, Emily's number appeared on Ethan's phone. He hesitated but eventually answered. "Eckley's Renovation and Remodeling," Ethan greeted dryly. "Hi, Ethan," Emily said firmly. "So, how's the big 4-0 treating you?" Ethan quipped. "This isn't a joke, Ethan," Emily snapped. "I agree. It's not funny," Ethan replied. "And you're welcome for canceling the credit cards." "Anything else?" Emily asked icily. "My birthday was yesterday," she added. "Why didn't you call?" "I didn't want this," Ethan said simply. "Maybe whoever you're with now would have wished you a happy birthday." "Grow up, Ethan," Emily retorted sharply. "Really, Emily? Adults honor their commitments and respect their vows," Ethan shot back. "Who's Melissa Kirk?" Emily demanded. "Melissa Stroh," She married Lucy Kirk, the bank manager. She's working at Gold Standard Real Estate now, Ethan explained. Oh, by the way, I got this adorable redhead. She's confident she can quickly find a buyer for the house. A buyer? Ethan, we're not selling the house, Emily exclaimed, her voice rising. Can you afford to be surprised? Ethan countered. We need to settle the second mortgage. Melissa told me we'll probably need to bring cash to the table to clear it. We are not selling the house, Emily yelled. Well, I've already stored all your furniture at Easy Warehouse on Independence Road, Unit 212. Your dad has the key, Ethan added nonchalantly. Oh, Lord, Emily groaned. I need to get home. Your dad couldn't fetch Samson, so I took him to Kevin's place, Ethan continued. Kevin? Kevin has Dobermans. You left the cat with him? Emily screamed. I didn't think of that, Ethan said with a chuckle. No wonder he was so eager to adopt. Ignoring Emily's pleas, Ethan ended the call, setting the phone down on the kitchen counter before heading upstairs to browse the internet. When his phone began ringing again, he chose to ignore it. Maybe your mom's new boyfriend can pay for your final school year, Ethan muttered, imagining Sophia's reaction. Why don't you look for scholarships for students with a 2.1 GPA? Because with that attitude, I'm not footing the bill. After shutting down the computer, Ethan shaved his 3-day stubble, took a long, hot shower, and dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. He placed his laptop in the cab of his pickup truck and, as his final act, threw his phone in the trash before wheeling the can to the curb. Going to miss you, Ethan, Herman Vogard, a neighbor, called out as Ethan walked down the driveway. Herman, you won't miss me, Ethan laughed, shaking his hand. The most we've talked is when you complained about Sophia's friends blasting music. It's tough to find neighbors who keep to themselves, Herman chuckled. You were the perfect neighbor. Never borrowed anything, never asked me to feed your cat or collect your mail. I bet the next folks won't leave me alone. You brought it on yourself, being so friendly, Ethan teased. As they shook hands again, Herman pointed to the trash can. It's ringing. Mind your business, Ethan replied with a smirk. Probably just a critter. Emily arrived at the house to find her key no longer worked. Pulling out her phone, she dialed the number on the Gold Standard Real Estate sign outside the house. Her phone, though fully charged, wouldn't connect. Frustrated, she borrowed Karen's phone while Liam checked the house's windows and doors. Gold Standard Real Estate, Melissa Kirk speaking. Melissa answered brightly. This is Emily Carter, Emily snapped. My key doesn't work at my house. Oh, you're Ethan Carter's ex, Melissa replied cheerfully. Ex? Emily stammered. I need to sign some paperwork. Melissa Kirk continued, her tone bright and professional. Guess what? I've got some clients interested in your home. It's not for sale, Emily Carter snapped. So, are you planning to buy out Mr. Carter's share? Melissa asked casually. The Richmonds might be disappointed. They like the Purcell house too. Emily clenched her jaw as Gary returned to the car. The house is secure, he announced. It's not for sale, Emily repeated, her voice rising. Frustrated, she dialed Ethan's number. You idiot, she muttered under her breath as his familiar voice answered. Eckley's renovation and remodeling, Ethan said smoothly. Can we drop you somewhere? Gary interrupted, growing impatient. My cat, Emily exclaimed suddenly, squeezing back into the car and calling Dennis. Hey, Dennis answered, sounding preoccupied. It's me, Emily said quickly. Did Ethan give Samson to you? With poppy, olive oil, and blue tulle around? They'd shred that cat, Dennis replied. No, Dad has him. You need to get him, Emily demanded. Dad's physical therapist is allergic. Thank goodness, Dennis muttered. By the way, Ethan nearly bankrupted us when he disappeared. I managed to secure a federal loan, but I had to let Fromont take it because none of us can lay ceramic tile. Emily said absently, not interested in his complaints. She dialed her father's number next. Who else are you calling? Karen snapped, annoyed. Don't you have unlimited minutes? Emily asked. Nope, 1,000 monthly, and Mr. Football here used most of them. Karen shot back, glaring at Gary. Last call, I promise, Emily assured her. When her father, Grant Nichols, finally picked up, he angrily agreed to let Emily come over. Gary drove them to Grant's house, where Karen hugged Emily before she headed inside. "How'd it go?" Gary asked Karen once she was back in the car. "Disastrous," Karen replied. "Who'd want her not with you around?" Gary joked, watching Emily disappear inside. "Any money from her?" Karen inquired. "Almost," Gary muttered, pulling out of the driveway. "Ethan's such a pain," Karen grumbled. "Can you believe he canceled her credit cards?" "She's got her debit card," Gary replied. "ATMs are everywhere," Karen pointed out. "She got about $10, Gary said with a sigh. "We need gas," Karen stated. Gary handed her $20 as he steered into the gas station. Karen watched as Gary glanced toward the beer cooler before honking the car horn. He shot her a disapproving look through the store window, but continued to the counter. "I was only getting one can," Gary claimed upon his return. "Just one?" Karen retorted. "When was the last time you settled for one?" Gary mumbled something incoherent. "Hey, isn't that petite lady new here? How come she's got such a prominent chest?" "She's petite. It's all about proportions," Karen corrected him with a sigh. "Let's just get the gas." Meanwhile, Emily endured her father's furious rant. Since his stroke, Grant's language had become increasingly crude, and he didn't hold back. "When was the last time you looked in a mirror?" Grant sneered. "Fat pig. That face looks like it was carved with an ice pick." "Dad!" Emily exclaimed, deeply hurt. 40 years old, so what? Women hit 40 every day, Grant grumbled. But not all of them betray their families at 40. He gestured to the legal documents spread out on the coffee table. Just then, Samson wandered into the room. "You'll need a lawyer," Grant continued, glaring at the papers. "And I have to clean that damn cat's litter box. Good Lord, I don't know what that animal eats, but it stinks to high heaven." "You're back in your old room," Grant added tersely. "I hope betraying us was worth it. Do you hear me? I hope it was." Later that night, Emily lay in her childhood bed, staring at the wallpaper she and her mother had chosen when she was 8. Samson curled up at her feet as she switched off the light. Staring into the darkness, Emily reflected on the week of her 40th birthday. It had started on a high note. The flight to Vegas was smooth, and she vividly recalled watching the city lights come into view as the plane descended. After checking into the hotel, everything had seemed perfect. Charlotte and Karen decided to try their luck at the roulette table before opting for dinner. Emily felt humiliated when the waiter informed her that her credit card had been declined. Not once, but twice. By the time the manager returned her third card with a stern expression, she was mortified. Her debit card, thankfully, went through, but checking her bank balance revealed it had been halved. Both Emily and Karen immediately blamed Ethan Carter. "He overstepped, way overstepped," Emily fumed. "Come on, Emily," Karen said, attempting to lighten the mood. "We're in Vegas. Don't let this setback ruin the fun." But watching Karen lose $300 at the blackjack table quickly dimmed the evening's excitement. "That was my $300, Karen muttered bitterly. Later that night, Emily struck up a conversation with a handsome young man at the bar, 25-year-old David Daltrey. He accompanied her to her room, but their encounter was brief. Just 4 minutes, as Karen later quipped. To make matters worse, Emily caught David attempting to steal her wallet from her purse. The misfortune continued. Karen lamented her $100 daily ATM withdrawal limit. "Lady Luck isn't on your side this trip," Emily joked, but Karen wasn't amused. By Tuesday evening, her birthday, Emily approached another young man. He smirked and said, "Lady, if I wanted closeness with a 300-pound woman, I'd stay home with my wife." He pointed her toward a nearby blind convention, mocking her appearance. Feeling humiliated, Emily took the elevator back to her room, but seeing the "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door, she groaned and spent hours in the lobby coffee shop. Eventually, she messaged Karen about heading back home. Later, after a shower, Emily lay on the bed in hot lingerie, staring at the ceiling. Neither Ethan nor Sophia had called to wish her a happy birthday, though Sophia had at least sent a text. Emily's heart ached at the sting of neglect, but she appreciated the birthday wishes from Dennis, Ryan, and Mark. The next morning, Karen grumbled about their budget. "I paid for the flights and the hotel," she hinted. By Saturday, Emily contemplated ending her friendship with Karen, exhausted by her constant complaints. But with Karen holding their airline tickets, Emily remained silent. Back in her childhood bedroom, Emily sighed deeply. Her birthday month had been anything but celebratory. As Jim Charles, the lawyer recommended by her coworker Freddie, reviewed the papers from Penny Barnes's office, he delivered a blunt assessment. He gets half, you get half. The house must be sold, and the profits split evenly. Expenses are shared. Despite his unemployment, he's not seeking child support. I don't want a divorce, Emily protested. I don't want to lose my home. I don't want to lose my family. Those feelings don't change the facts, Jim said plainly. If one person wants a divorce, it can proceed. Can we request a consultation? Emily asked hopefully. Yes, but it won't change much, Jim confirmed. Deflated, Emily managed a weak smile. I'll call Penny's office. As Jim busied himself with his notes, Emily gazed at the book titles on his shelf. His periodic and punctuated the heavy silence. Here's the issue, Jim finally said, setting his phone down. Miss Barnes doesn't know where her client is. Your husband settled her fee and left. All she has is his email. Is that necessary? Emily asked. It's her only means of reaching him, but no, she won't disclose it. Attorney-client privilege, Jim clarified. Oh, Emily murmured, slumping in her chair. Your husband also informed Miss Barnes that henceforth, your daughter will be responsible for her tuition and dorm costs, Jim added. He mentioned something about initiating new traditions. What does that mean? Emily whispered. I'm not sure, but your daughter might, Jim replied. Elsewhere, Ethan Carter stood on the trading floor of a bustling flooring company. He scanned the room while answering a call. Listening, Shorty, he greeted playfully. Guess what, Mr. Shorty? Shannon Carlisle's voice teased. Looks like you and your 7 inches are making me a mom again. Again? Ethan said, genuinely surprised. Tony's still in diapers, and now we're expecting another. Shannon giggled on the other end. Where are you? Ethan asked. Just left Dr. Pritt's, Shannon replied. Head to Stone Grill. I'm taking you out to celebrate, Ethan said warmly. All this talk about my figure is why we're in this situation, Shannon teased, pushing Tony's stroller into the Texas heat. At 4 feet 8 inches, Shannon brushed her hair back and squinted into the sunlight. As she made her way to her car, a smile crossed her face. She reflected on how Ethan always noticed the smallest details. Her crooked smile, her dimple, her dark brown eyes. When Ethan first told her he was leaving the gas station, she had quipped, "So I can forward your last paycheck?" Now, she couldn't imagine life without him. I love you, Ethan, Shannon whispered as she climbed into her car. I love you too, Ethan replied.